Welcome back to the Valicites podcast, the show for modern finance leaders looking to elevate their impact, sharpen their storytelling, and use AI to drive smarter decisions. I'm your host, Albert Ramos. My guest today is someone who's redefining what it means to be a finance business partner. Soufyan Hamid, you've heard of him. He's the founder of the Finance Circle. He's all over LinkedIn. A finance circle, a training platform helping finance teams move beyond the spreadsheet and into the heart of businesses. With a background that spans audit, consulting, FP&A, and strategic finance across top organizations, you've heard of them like Deloitte and Proximus, Soufyan has built a unique voice in the industry. He's trained thousands of finance professionals on how to build influence, own the room, and become storytellers of strategy, not just reporter of results. That's so important. In this episode, we unpack the habits that block FP&A teams from reaching their full potential, the mindset shift required to move from accuracy to action, and how to use tools like AI to bring more humanity back into finance. So good. Let's get into it. Soufyan, welcome to the Valicites podcast, sir. Such an honor.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Albert. It's great to be with you. I followed you for some time, and now we're finally having this discussion live.
I can't believe it's happening. I've been following you also for quite a while. I think behind the scenes, I'll let you know. I was a pretty shy kid, right, with some just natural ability in mathematics. And I knew later on down the road that I would have to move away from the computer screen or crunching the numbers and actually be able to speak to operators, C suite board eventually. And so I started working on some things. But I remember when I came back to LinkedIn, I started following your content and it just changed everything for me from how I communicate on stage to how I communicate in the boardroom. So I'm looking forward to chatting more about that.
Well, that's great to see that I have an impact on you.
Massive impact. I appreciate you, sir. Well, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear more about your journey and how did you go from traditional finance roles to launching, which is seems to be a very successful firm and company, the Finance Circle.
Well, basically, when you say you were a shy kid, I've never been a shy kid. I've never been shy as such. The only thing is that I communicated to show how smart I was. So to show how much I knew about a topic, how much right I was. And the thing is, I was the typical finance guy, having a lot of information, a lot of insights, complex matters, modelization. I love to speak about the models and how they were built.
Right.
But eventually, after the meeting, people were wondering, okay, what am I doing with this? And this is something I didn't really realize until a CFO told me directly, Sufyan, you have to bring your story. And this is how I started to think, okay, communication is not just what you say, it's not just how you communicate, how at ease you are in public speaking. It's really also about the content and how you structure that content. And this is what brought me to storytelling. And this is what brought me here today, because after having worked during 17 years in finance, and only in the last 4 years, I started to become really good in communication, really good in finance business partnering.
Mhm.
I thought, okay, will you do that for yourself on your own and build your own career based on that? Or will you just take this extra effort that you did on that side and spread it so that all the finance community could work on their what I call the soft skills or the human skills?
Right.
And eventually I decided to go for the second part, decided to spread that learnings because I didn't want to be the only one knowing about a good presentation, knowing about how to navigate the politics inside a company, how to communicate correctly, how to deal with difficult questions, difficult situations, manage conflicts, all these kind of things that somehow in any part of a company you will have. And finance people being the ones that gather the information from all the sides of the company. Well, I decided to focus on that field because this is the field I know. This is where I took the slaps as well. basically in the meetings, in the
Yeah,
presentation.
yeah.
And just to avoid that many more people take the same slides I did in the past, I want to spread that knowledge.
I love that. And just to summarize that, and from what I'm hearing, is you went from not only leveraging your IQ, right, and understanding finance like the back of your hand and the data and everything you've put together, the team put together, but also then transition to this EQ relatable, right, type of empathetic storytelling so that people understood, can relate with, and engage in and lean in on all of the things that you were bringing to the table from a finance function. That's really exciting. And now I know people, if they're needing help, they clearly can go to you and, like I did, watch your content, follow the framework, which I can't wait to chat about. But how did you, like, who did you go to? How did you get so great at this?
Well, I had to develop myself
Mm-hmm.
because, when I was a finance business partner, there were a lot of trainings, but it never quite understood the reality of people working in finance. When you have a presentation skills training, they are made to give you everything to give a speech, a keynote, for example.
Right.
But when you are in a business meeting, in a board or in a management committee or an exco, you're not there to give a TED talk. You're there
Right.
to
Exactly.
deliver insights, making sure that the meeting goes on, respond to questions, drive the thoughts until you arrive to the moment where your presentation is finished, and eventually people decide what to do with it. It's not that you expect applause at the end. It's not that you want people to be inspired by what you say. It's factual. It's just that you want to avoid the classic, I'm throwing all the information to your face and deal with it. It must be engaging, it must be structured, it must be full of content. And this is what made me think, okay, I'm going to take everything I learned from these TED Talks, the Toastmasters, and all these
Right.
communication skills um, parts, and adapt it slightly to our field, our work. And
Right.
so, like you asked, I got it from there, but I adapted to our world, and it did not come from day one. I started. I remember I started a presentation of a 3-year plan with the CFO and the CEO. I started with a story. I started with a context, and every 45 seconds, the CEO saying, "Okay, what's the result? Okay, where are we going? What do you have?" He was starting to ask questions, and because I realized, yeah, with the CEO and the CFO, you're not there to build a story. You throw the insights to their face, you throw everything, the conclusion, everything, and then you develop. This is how I understood it. It's not that I learned it in a training. It's because I tried the other way around and it didn't
Right.
work. So this is part
Wow.
of the steps that I took for you.
So good. Thank you for sharing that, because I know a lot of people out there are probably wondering, okay, well, how did you do it? And now they have the luxury of being able to follow you and the content and framework. But it's so exciting. I mean, you took things that you learned from a Toastmaster, a keynote training, and TED Talks. And what I've learned about you is your versatility and adaptability. You preach that a lot. It's not about just executing what you want to go say, right? And all the things that you've brought together, but it's about creating impact. And you post about that a lot. You talk about finance teams shifting from just executing and getting it done and letting everyone know everything you know, to, wait a second, you need to actually pull at the heartstrings, the hearts and the minds, not just the mind, right? And deliver it with impact, with, so that you're effective in your storytelling and what you're trying to land. What does that shift really mean to you? I mean, can you expand on that from execution to impact?
There's only one thing that you have to ask yourself when you want to communicate something is it useful? How can I make it useful to people I will talk to? And it goes about your presentations. It goes about the work that you do. It goes about your behavior in a meeting. Is that useful to your business partners? If it's not, how can I make it useful? And you will see that with this one and only question, you will realize that it will change what you communicate, how you communicate,
Mm.
how you even frame your work, how you scope the quantity of information that you need. All these things just by putting yourself in the shoes of the people that are expecting something from your work. And you will quickly see that when you work in finance, accuracy, completeness, all these things are the ground, the basics. It must be accurate, it must be complete. But then it's not what people want. It's not the goal as such. It's a tool.
Right.
It's the tool that you use to make sure your work is useful to someone. But it's not the output, the outcome that people expect from you.
Right. Well, I know the audience will agree with this, and I'd imagine after spending time with thousands and thousands of people, we could all agree, myself included. Typically, those of us in finance, we're very analytical, right? We gather the facts, right? We see the mathematics and everything lining up if it does, and we can be pretty direct about it. But that doesn't always work when going cross functional, meaning speaking to those from marketing for sure, speaking to those in operations, maybe a little less there, not as bad there when we're direct and just factual and no fluff. But I love what you post too, and what you train on is wait a second, no, you have to understand your audience. You have to leverage your soft skills and your EQ when communicating. Can you walk us through why that's probably even more important than the facts that you've gathered and that you provide, let's say in a boardroom or even just, with a different department, maybe during a budgeting meeting,
Mhm. Well, it goes back to what I've just said about being useful.
right?
And you're not useful to everyone the same way.
I love that.
It would be like applying shampoo on a bald guy like me. It doesn't really make sense. You know, it doesn't. So when you when I say know your audience, it's not that you are going to scan everyone and just make a report on what they do, what they like. No, you have to understand what do they expect from this meeting, what do they expect from this report, what do they expect from this mail. Because if you think about what they follow, every part of a company follows drivers or KPIs.
Yeah,
Like the marketing would be the effects, for example, on the sales. Like they have a budget, it will be then the CAC, the SAC, the MAC, everything that you calculate to make sure that your strategy is effective.
right,
Well, this is what matters to them. And so if the marketing budget goes a bit beyond what was expected, yeah, but did it produce the effect? Yes, then it worked, it mattered. And so as a finance business partner, you have to be a bit smarter than just saying, okay, my marketing budget increased. Yes, but if the sales increase the same way or the other sales effort costs decreased as much, well, is it a problem? It's just by that kind of intelligence that you will understand that everything that you see will have a different, uh, let's say, approach of the people that will receive that information,
right.
different reception. For example, yeah, finance people will most probably have their eyes explode when they see that the marketing budget goes above. But
My skin's already crawling.
you
this is
see,
this is a true, like, this is a common situation.
and the thing is that most probably when you talk to them you will see that yeah, marketing budget, just like ourselves, the accuracy and the completeness and all the assertions that we have to test is the ground, the basis. Well, for marketing people the basis is their budget. How do we spend it?
Mhm.
Then the outcome becomes what does it become? Do
Right.
we have
Okay.
an effect on our sales? Did we convince more people to follow us? Did we convince people to convert? All these is the outcome they expect. So you have to think further than, okay, what is the data that I want to show them? You have
Mhm.
to think, what does this data mean in their thinking process.
Yeah, from their lens. That's so
Yes.
good. And you actually developed a framework because I know there's probably a lot of questions. Well, how do I go do that? How do I understand what they expect? How do I put this all together so that I have an effective meeting or speech or what have you, right?
Mhm.
Or presentation. So you actually created the financial storytelling program. Do you
Mhm.
mind walking us through what makes that different from any type of standard training you've received or some others? Like, how did you put this together? And can you walk us through how it differentiates from other things?
Well, it's difficult for me to say how different it is from others because I'm pretty sure that a lot of people who put something on the market, they did it with the best intentions and with the best qualities they have. I can only speak about how I think that my training will certainly have an impact
I'll
on
tell you right now, you're being way too modest. I've seen it. I've seen it is very, very good. And I've done the whole Toastmasters and some Landmark and some other lock us in a room and pound us until we get our communication skills down. I've done all of that. So your framework is absolutely incredible. I just got to let the audience know that because I know you're being
Thank you,
honest.
thank you. But what I can say is that, well, it's because it's a framework that's built for finance professionals by a finance professional.
Excellent.
And so it's not that you will have to think, okay, how am I applying this learning to my own field of work? Or how am I applying this to a budget presentation? How am I applying this to a monthly result presentation? No, I did that for you because it's basically how I learned to give presentations. And with those, I also share what doesn't work, what works in other setups. Like, for example, if you have a team meeting, for example, if you have an all hands meeting, some setup will work, but if you report a monthly result to the board or to another team, it won't because it's a meeting, it's a business meeting.
Right.
And so in this case, it's really the tailoring of the presentation skills that makes it so, I mean, so good in your words for finance professionals. And it goes in four steps. And the thing is that the first step is always the one that's often forgotten. It's
Mm-hmm.
basically the data analysis.
Mm.
You know, storytelling courses, they generally go directly to the presentation side, to the narrative side. But I've discovered with my 3 years, 4 years of experience that where people have the most difficulties is not really in how they behave in front of an audience, how they create slides, for example. No, it's basically to know and filter what is worth communicating.
Mm.
See, you have thousands of lines, hundreds of lines. What is worth giving to your audience? And this is the first part. Prepare your message, the step one. We take a a data set, a report, for example, comparing with versus last year versus budget. And then here you have a lot of information. You have a lot of outliers, exceptions. You have trends. You have basically a lot. And what I want people to notice is that some will be important to communicate,
Right.
others because you will realize that some will have no impact at all. For example, I mean, it's just an example, but in a lot of trainings that I give, I always try to include like a peak in a month and a down in the other month because there was an over accrual or something like that.
Right.
Well, since you report on a year-to-date basis, a lot of people will say, yeah, we had a problem in the month of April, but it was settled in the month of May. Does it really matter if you speak on a year-to-date basis? Will the people really have something to say or any impact on this? By going to the filters, you will realize, okay, that was a nice information for me. I made the check, but it won't have any follow-up. So let's drop it.
Makes sense. Yeah. I really love, and going back to that first step too around prepping, and it's going and also kind of unraveling that too. Again, it goes back to who's the audience and what do they expect. And I really appreciate that, and I've learned that the hard way, right? Because I think a lot of finance professionals, we could all agree on this, is typically we love just diving into, because we're comfortable with it, the technical side or the technical precision. And I'd love to ask you about that, because I know you've actually gone it deep into the what I would call the finance executive psyche, right? Where, and I've been there too, where we hide behind the financial jargon or verbiage, or even the technical precision items. Why do you think that's the case? What why is it so difficult at times to get past that first barrier of what you're teaching now, which actually, if you think about it, AI is taking over and replacing a lot of the tasks
Mhm.
that at times we found ourselves hiding behind, as I mentioned earlier. It's just comfortable. Well, then that's forcing and challenging a lot of finance executives to be more into a strategy advisory, and one that communicates and storytells. This is why I think your content, what you're doing, is so timely. It was then, and it far, far more is today, because I think we're finding that that piece, that storytelling piece, that advisory piece is far needed far more, especially those that understand the AI and all the fundamentals that go into that. Why do you think, in the psyche of the finance executive, why do we stick to what's comfortable and not lean in or move past that first barrier?
Well, first, I want to give you a small anecdote. Like
Yes.
when I was still working in the previous company, that was 6 years ago. I told you I followed a training to give a TED talk, and I
Right.
gave a sort of internal TED talk to 200 people inside a company or something like that.
Mhm.
And the topic is why AI won't take our jobs.
Mhm.
Because I thought indeed AI won't take the job, but AI will take the tasks. And so the goal for you was to discover how you can still serve the objective of your position with other competencies, like, for example, storytelling, communication, negotiation, adding this value as a finance business partner where AI would simply replace the operational side of the work. And so that's funny to see that today I was already ahead, and that's
Yeah, you
maybe
were.
yeah, that's maybe what directed me to the next step. What do we do after AI?
Mm.
Because it's inevitable. It will come. And so I think that today for people in finance, it's difficult because you have that kind of personality that directed us to the studies of finance, that directed us to work in finance. It's about also being as complete as possible, having loving that logic of the double-sided accounting. Debits and credits must be equal. It matches perfectly. It has no differences. So we absolutely need to be we absolutely want to be the geeky side of the company because it's what we like to do. We like to work with modelization. We like to work with um, technical stuff that will be as concrete as possible, and it's hard for us to move to something that's intangible. It's easy to say, I did this work in so much time. I created a model that has a variance of 0.5%. I created a forecast that has that much variance versus the budget. All this kind of thing. It's concrete. I've tried. Huh? It's almost impossible to put numbers on how you communicate, for
Mm.
example. Here, it's difficult to put numbers on the influence that you have. I know a lot of people try with formulas like influence equals impact or something
Right,
like that.
right.
I mean, it's more theoretical, it's inspirational, but you don't have any concrete evidence. And our mindset is based on believing what's concrete, what's tangible. And so this is where it blocks because for us people, what is not measured is doesn't exist.
That's right.
And we just need to understand that you can try the whatever you want. Measuring it will take more time and effort than just enjoying that part.
Hmm. I love that. Well, I'd imagine as people are listening to this, here soon or in the future as they come back to it. By the way, we need to dust off that presentation you gave a while back with the 200 people internally because it's so timely. It's still useful today. So if you recorded it, maybe share it. That'd be awesome. I'd
I
love to
would
see
be
it.
so ashamed. I didn't have a beard.
We want to see it raw. We want
I
to see it
was
raw.
slicker.
Well,
No,
I'm
but
sure I'm sure there's a
I,
lot of people that are going to be doing some type of meeting or even presentation here shortly. So, do you mind offering us some just practical blind spots or what I would call watch out for this, do not do these things within your presentation? Or even, do you mind sharing just from experience or as you're coaching others, right? I think I'm sure it's never perfect as people are going through the framework or delivering, but what mistakes have you seen that you just want to completely avoid so you don't kill the meeting, the impact, the presentation?
the big blind spot, the big weakness is focusing too much on your slides. You
Hmm.
know, I said that people need concrete stuff, and in all the presentation, the slides, creating the graphs, the text is the concrete matter in this. And so, in all the trainings I give, the team that spends the most time on the slides is generally the one that performs the worst in the final
Wow.
presentation because they've put so many efforts in building nice slides, in building nice visuals, that they lose everything that I taught them on the message that they have to bring, on the narrative structure, on focusing on engaging with your audience, looking at them in the eye, having a conversation with people. No, in that, since they've put so many efforts in the slides, well, eventually they will look at their slides during the presentation. So, my big recommendation is do not touch PowerPoint before you know what you say and how you are going to say it. Do not touch it. Touch it when you're sure about the structure of your thoughts, the message that you want to bring, because not only will you be ready to present even if you don't have slides, but your slides will be thinner. They will be lighter. You will only have the slides that you need to support your story and not a report that you will use telling a story.
So good. One of the things that you post a lot about, and actually reminded me too. I'm sure well, she was on the podcast, but you've probably seen her on LinkedIn too, Julia Kozlov, and you both got it hit so much for me. It hits home so much around curiosity, and you challenge finance leaders to stay curious. And I think you were mentioning that earlier around just understanding what the audience expects, right? Department by department, cross functional, and I think that's more important than ever before. Finance leaders to not say siloed, but you press it on stay inquisitive, stay curious. Can you walk us through what you've seen and then also challenge us, I guess, in a sense, on how we can leverage curiosity as we're shaping our finance careers?
Well, it goes back to in the start of my journey as an entrepreneur. I delivered a training to a company, Holcim, and I discussed with their CFO. And one of the things he said just stayed in my mind. It was clear before, but I didn't have that sentence. He said, "Finance people are business people with finance expertise."
Mm.
That means that you have to think about the fact that you work in a company. This company, the goal of this company is not to produce financial statements. The goal of this company will be to build a product, produce that product, sell that product, become the number one, because having 35% market share, everything. Well, this is what you have to know. And you have to bring your tool set to serve that goal, understand. And this is the curiosity I'm talking about. know how you produce that. Go once in the factory and see how much grams of this product you need, of this material you need to produce that product. Know how people work there, know the shifts, all these things. It doesn't have to make you an expert in this, but at least you know how it works, because let's remember that everything that we use, financial statements, a P&L, a cash flow, anything of this, it's the translation in accounting of what happened in reality.
Yeah. I'm
You had
almost
a
seeing I'm almost seeing this blend of, and even listening you say it now, this blend of finance and even operations, or at least understanding how the business operates. Do you see that a lot where this is almost becoming the finance role, at least when you get to that, leadership executive level role, it's a blend, a hybrid of finance and ops. Are you seeing that too?
Well, I see that more and more, but more on a voluntary basis. It
Mm,
doesn't really come from the leadership to say, okay, you have to observe how operations work, you have to observe how a
interesting.
sales team work. No, it's people who are more and more interested by finance business partnering. They say, okay, I want to be useful to them, and for that I'm going to take one day on site and see how it's developed. I'm going to go in a client meeting with my with the account manager I get along with. All these will make that you become a better business partner, but so far I haven't seen that pressure directly coming from the management. It comes on a voluntary basis. And so, as FP&A leaders, as leaders of finance, CFOs, and so on, I think it's a responsibility to sort of insufflate that spirit to your
Yeah,
team. And
I
by
like.
being an example, for example, simply.
Yeah, and I know we're going to get to AI here in a sec, but you make such a good point. As that leader, your responsibility, and because you have that influence to go and develop others, develop and actually support career pathing, right? With the technology now and what it can do, especially in the finance function and the finance back office, we need to be teaching and mentoring our finance team members on how to communicate, on how to be cross functional, on how to deep dive and understand the full operations of the business, not just to your point, the accounting to the forecasting, modeling, and statements and all of that, all the reporting. That's so good, and I'm taking that away too. It's just such a good challenge for us all, especially those that have the privilege of leading others in our finance space. Is lean in there, is lift them up and have them expand and stay curious and inquisitive. That's so good. Going back to your talk, and I know I keep hitting on it as you bring up AI and AI replacing the task, not the role. How do you still feel about that today? Now that things have progressed, do you still feel like roles in the finance function won't be replaced? It will be more of some of the tasks, or are you seeing some roles getting replaced now? What are your thoughts just overall on AI and its impact to the finance function?
Yeah, maybe I'm a bit cynical, but I think it would be somehow, I don't know how to say that to still remain polite, but I think it would be utopic to think that jobs won't disappear.
Mm,
Uh, they will, because companies are looking for profit, and the less cost you have, the more the more profit you'll get. And so it would be simply a utopia to think that they will simply make people do other stuff.
right.
But as a finance professional who still wants to be relevant, it's your responsibility to determine how am I going to still be useful after that big wave of task replacement. Because AI will certainly take some tasks, like, for example, if you have a controlling team of 5 people, they all do reporting, they all do forecasting, all these will be replaced. But you won't need 5 people to still be a partner. There will be maybe something like 2 or 3 left. How will you be one of the 2 or 3 left? Well, by developing how useful you can be with your remaining skills, not the ones that make a report match on Excel, not the ones that will simply drag an average to determine what the forecast will be in the coming month. No, you will be the one who will use that forecast to make sure that the operations will change how they produce a certain product, how we will look for alternatives for the material that became more and more expensive. These kind of things will make you useful for the future. So it's a bit a mixed answer. Like, you will be useful if you do some extra effort, and whatever will happen, there will be some, I mean, some negative impacts on
Yeah.
distribution.
I got to
For
say, I align with you there on, and I went quiet on this topic for a little bit because I could tell that I was starting to offend, or I would be quoted as the fear monger on LinkedIn or outside of LinkedIn. But then I think people are coming to the understanding and seeing it now, not just hearing about it or reading about it, but they're seeing that this technology, as it becomes more precise, it becomes faster, and for the most part accurate. It could take on a lot of the tasks, specifically as we speak of finance. In finance, we see it in the accounting space with AR, AP, and some of the big players, and even some newer ones are starting to show, yes, we can take this on. And then, as you're well aware of Valisites, what we do on the reporting side and the forecasting and modeling and executive reporting, we now take over that too using the technology. So to your point, it's a shift, right? It's okay; those get replaced, and maybe that role gets replaced, but that doesn't mean you're out of luck, right? There's going to be other roles from an advisory, strategic, and as I always, as I'm mentoring finance leaders, is your ability to understand the foundations, right? It doesn't necessarily mean you need to be a builder of AI or models and all that, but understanding the foundation so you know when you need to allocate resources. Do I allocate it to a human? Do I allocate it to AI? And obviously, there's an umbrella or ecosystem of things that are considered AI, agents included. And then around the corner, robotics, right? And I think we need to start chatting about this. And I love that you said it today. And I'm agreeing with you. I think we need to think that it's not going to be smooth, hunky dory, right? Rainbows and butterflies, as I call it. Nothing's going to get replaced. We'll be fine. It's just augmentation. That's not the reality that's occurring right now. But I'm, I'm, I'm bullish that there'll be a nice shift where people will just do something different, more valuable in the
Mhm.
finance function.
I think so. We will need less people to do that, but
Mhm.
this will be definitely more valuable. There will be other jobs too in the future. I
Right,
mean, it's all a matter of era, and today we are still in the era where we don't know if we can trust this. We don't know yet how
right,
we are going to organize our whole system to make it work with AI agents. But when it works, when the big firms will start to do it, and some have already, well, eventually the smaller firms will follow. There will be a big down in terms of employment, and then people will reevaluate what they can do to still be relevant in a company, in their lives, or maybe they will become entrepreneur or something like
right.
that.
That's a good point. Yeah. Well, I know I have a couple more questions for you because I know I want to respect your time. How, speaking of AI, how do you coach others to use AI specifically for financial storytelling and presentations?
Well, today it's basically this. In our field, we have often that idea that we do not have the time.
Mhm.
We do not have the structure, we do not have the skills, we do not have the time to to be good in storytelling. This is the feedback that I received. Most of the time people say we do not have the structure. When I say the structure, they do not have the framework to use. And so this is it, using AI to help you on this. You do not have the framework, use Copilot, ChatGPT, Claude maybe, to create an outline of what you are going to present. When I say an outline, don't just throw, oh, prepare me an outline about that topic. You know that it will be complete bullshit at that moment. You will certainly have a non-usable framework in that time. Now, if you say, okay, I'm going to use a storytelling framework of the pyramid structure that was taught by Soufyan Hamid, having it at each point the three what that's compelled, can you create an outline of this data set based on this information? And so you will have an outline. You can create the slides with Copilot, for example. You can, or there are other tools, but I use Copilot, for example. You
Yeah.
can say, I will create the slides, and from the outline that I got, I will simply ask Copilot to create the deck. It won't be perfect, but you will have saved like
Oh my
2 hours
goodness. It's amazing.
at
Yeah,
least.
exactly. Maybe even
And
more.
so in this is what I want people to do, is to understand how this can help working on the parts that you are not the most valuable on. Are you the most valuable in clicking in PowerPoint to have another slide, copying, pasting a graph? No, you are the most valuable in challenging what's written in that, asking the good questions. This is another use of AI. For example, I create a deck, I put it on ChatGPT or even through Copilot, and I say, what would be the 10 most difficult questions that I would get from a board? And then I get the 10 questions and I start preparing them. See, this is the kind of reflection that you couldn't have in the past because you were so busy working on your slides that eventually you started that. There's another use of AI, and this is one of my favorite tools. It exists in PowerPoint. It's the coach with rehearsal with coach. That means that you can present to PowerPoint using your camera, your microphone, and it will tell you whether you use filler words, whether
So
you
good.
repeat yourself, whether you read your slides, if you are well placed in your camera, if you're not too close or not too far. This is amazing. I mean, in the past, you had to block the time of 5 people in or
Recording.
record yourself. But the thing is that I hate to watch myself.
Yeah. It's like, that's
And
not my voice. What'd you all do to
yeah,
it?
exactly. I will probably not watch the podcast after because I hate to hear myself.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch it. There's some great stuff on here, and I love. So for those that use the suite of Microsoft, you have that at your fingertips. Microsoft Copilot, as well as it living within your PowerPoint presentation, and as you heard, you actually even have a coach, an AI coach that you can practice on, which highly recommend. It's not just about prep, but it's getting your reps in. And to Sufjan's point, the value add. Another one, Sufjan, I don't know if you ever use it. I love Gamma.app. That one's been a big one. Now, that's if I'm not using the Microsoft Suite, because if I can just have a one-stop shop, beautiful. But if I'm not using the Microsoft Suite, Gamma.app is another. It's another good one, an AI where I mean it does just about 90% of the way there. You save hours and hours. Now you can focus more on refinement, but also to your point, the value add, the actual how are you going to make this impactful to storytelling.
Yeah, I've heard of it. To be honest, I've never used it, but I've heard of it, and yeah, I'm curious to see what it would mean because in what I got from people, Gamma, and all these slide designing tools
Canva.
you find on the web are good for explanatory presentations where, for
Mm.
example, you have a topic and you want to explain. But as soon as you bring data in this, it starts to be a bit clunky.
Yeah, good point. That actually is an opportunity. I'd imagine they're working on that. But I love it. I mean, this was great practical advice. And just to close off on this, I'd love to hear any advice you have for this next up and coming next generation of finance leaders stepping into these strategic roles. Any advice you have for them?
Well, my advice would be when you start to still build everything that's technical. That's what the advice that I give to every young people starting in finance. Your ground will be in how good you are in finance. in the modeling, in understanding the grounds of finance, to make sure that you are good at what you do, and then you build upon that, because finance remains a skill. It remains a tool. Whatever the tasks are associated to that, I also give finance for non-finance trainings, and I see that it's not that easy to understand the different
Mm,
implications of an event in real life. It's difficult to understand that it will have an implication in accruals, it will have an implication in the costs, and then in its turn have a tax implication. It's a skill that you must have, but quickly understand why you use that for.
mm.
And it must come after 2 or 3 years. Don't stay on that part. You've built your reps, you've built your muscle, and then now start to fight. Start to understand how useful you can be by exploring how finance can be used by other departments, other parts of the company. This is how you'll get known. And
Agreed.
that's maybe my last advice: quickly become visible. Quickly become visible in the company, because no matter how good you are, a good one who's visible will always be better seen than a perfect one who does not show himself.
Such great advice, and I hope people come back to that and listen to that a couple different times. And I'll make sure to post that one on LinkedIn. That is huge. Well, thank you for giving us that advice, as well as what I like to call the challenge. And I know a lot of people are going to really tap in there and lean in. Sufyan, this has been outstanding. Again, such an honor. I'm a huge fan. I can't wait to let my wife know we've chatted today. This is huge for me. How can people learn more about you, specifically the Finance Circle, as well as the financial storytelling program? I think people definitely, as I mentioned earlier, need to jump in there. How can they find more about you and all of that?
Well, you have a lot of information, basically all information on the financecircle.com, and you can find me on LinkedIn. Just connect with me. I'm a nice guy to talk to, and
Yes.
I apparently post a lot of interesting stuff on a daily basis. So just come enjoy what I give for free every day. Sometimes it's an inspiration moment, sometimes it's clearly defined framework. It depends on the day, but I happily share that with my community, because I want to make sure that within the 10 next years, we'll still be relevant and we will still be useful by bringing the human side of finance to the company.
And as you're saying, I think for all of you listening, lean in there, right? Start upskilling and focusing on the EQ, the communication skills, and the storytelling. What I like to tell people that I work with, especially the finance leaders or fractional CFOs, accounting firms, is let Valisites, let us take over the technical, right? You focus on the value add, we'll focus on the technical. So if you're building a finance team that needs any type of real time clarity, reporting, AI powered forecasting, or even the having a smarter decision framework of support, let Valisites take it on. And obviously, you could always go to valisites.com, get a demo, come chat with me, DM me too. I'm not as nice as Soufyan, but I'll try. I'll try my hardest. Reach out to me, and we'll talk more about that. But Soufyan, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time and for
Thank
your
you, Albert.
friendship and your mentorship from afar, virtually as well. I'm telling you, I've been all over your material and it's been so helpful for me. Again, I was that shy kid and I love math. I love finance. I have to get around in front of people. And that's always been a challenge, but you've been so helpful. So thank you for the impact.
Thank you for the feedback, and thank you for having me, Albert.
My pleasure. Well, everyone, this has been the Valisites podcast. I'm Albert Ramos, your host. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.